So, this is the last part of the program. I'm excited to be here with you all. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Sohan Ariel Hayes. I was born on Wurundjeri country in Baillinger, southwest WA. And if you ever drive south on the Southwest Highway, you might notice the welcome sign to Baillinger reads, "Experience the magic." Yep. They're endemic mushrooms that contain psilocybin in the region. Watch out. I'm an artist and animator, and my work primarily focuses on immersive environments, including projection, virtual reality, interactive video, and documentary. I'm interested not in animation not only for the screen, but also animation that's embedded into the world, inhabiting both the natural and mythical landscapes. So over the next hour, I'm going to flesh out this idea of drawing in space and introduce some considerations for encouraging a practice of spatial design. Of course, spatial design is part of a much larger multidisciplinary practice, but we're going to just have a look at three key works, three key works by artists and discuss their approaches to working with light, and it should be fun. So together, we'll narrow down into a discrete example of projection mapping as a group exercise. So we'll get together in the tea room using projectors and some software called MadMapper. And then at the end, we'll come back in here and virtually wander outside into the landscape to explore some cultural and spatial considerations when working with these techniques at a larger scale. So I love to begin talks on the history of cinema in a darkened room with a flashlight, making hand shadows in its beams to indicate that while the moving image technologies of today may be the most modern of media, but they're also grounded in the most ancient. And there's a wonderful demonstration by this work on the screen, which is that beam projecting into space, and it's the 1973 installation Line Describing a Cone by Anthony McCall. Sadly, I can't show the work here in front of you. We discovered last week that one of the disadvantages of being in this fine museum space is that there are restrictions around what you can bring into the building, as opposed to what we might be able to bring into the building at Pika. So Line Describing a Cone requires haze from fog or smoke, and so we can't add that into this room. For me, this is a reminder of just how fragile many of these kinds of light-sensitive, immersive works are. They need to be held in very specific conditions to come to life. So instead, I'm going to show you two videos with Anthony McCall describing and commenting on the work.
Line Describing a Cone is 30 minutes long. It's a 16mm film projected with film projector, so we have the projector running into space. What happens at the beginning is there's a pencil of light that runs through space from the projector. The image on the wall.
I've got two senses.
Sometimes it's making the mechanisms of cinema visible. Sometimes it's simply making you think about that whole relationship between the screen and yourself as a viewer. Expanded cinema began in the late 60s, 70s.
We're going to multiply stuff like that. That's a bit more often. Is that the AI working? Let's begin.
Project to the wall. The image on the wall at that point is just a dot of white light. That dot on the wall gradually traces a circle, leaving a trail behind it. Traces it very, very slowly. It takes half an hour to define an entire circle. And in the end, you have a complete hollow cone of light in space. This has a certain drama to it. As it completes itself, there's a kind of a... And of course, there's no surprises. Everyone can see where it's going. And then they kind of begin to quite eagerly wait for it to complete itself. You can watch it however you want, but I'd recommend perhaps try standing with your back to the image and looking toward the projector and see what you see and go from there. It has to be large enough to be capable of incorporating its spectators. The Star Auditorium is an auditorium. It's a traditional film viewing space. It does rather throw into relief what a film viewing situation is usually like. So there'll be a certain improvised spirit. And I would say that the performative aspect of tonight's showing will be rather unique.
And so I did set this up in the studio to test it last week, and I'd just forgotten how beautiful that light is, and actually it really reminded me of looking down into the tunnel, and it hadn't reminded me of this previously, but it's that near-death experience, sort of that tunnel of light, and it's such a fine ether that the fabric of the work. I'm just going to play a few more comments by the artist about this work.
This is primarily because there is this paradox. When you first encounter the works, you see something made of veils of light that looks quite stable, solid, and almost like it's a thing. And something that almost everybody does, even people who've been to them repeatedly, everybody does is to reach up with their hand and to feel the plane of light. So paradoxically, it's quite tactile. Even, of course, your touch reveals that there's nothing there. Nonetheless, your imagination insists that there is something that's quite solid and quite palpable. These solid light projections do have these two faces. They exist as a sculptural form, a three-dimensional volumetric object, which you can walk around, go into and explore. But when you turn around, you also see that that volumetric form derives from a two-dimensional drawing. And one thing I discovered very early on is that if you project onto a wall drawings, like a movie, an animated movie, you can have very, very complex forms interacting with one another and superimposed on one another, and we have no difficulty deciphering what we're looking at. But if you were to project one of those animations as a solid light piece, you would find that the three-dimensional spaces created by those intersecting lines is too complex for the eyes and the body to decipher. So they become incomprehensible. And I found from very early on that very simple lines made the most interesting three-dimensional objects. In the 70s, all my solid light works were horizontal. This was, of course, normal because they were working, came out of cinema. film projectors were designed to sit flat on tables and produce horizontal images on the wall. But when I began working again in the beginning of 2001 or 2 or something like that, of course I was working with a new kinds of projectors, digital projectors, and I quickly realized that they were not gravity bound like a film projector. And I began to explore vertical projections and became increasingly interested by the way in which they aligned themselves much more with a sculptural tradition than with a horizontal, with a cinematic tradition, because they, one began to think of them as vertical figures, standing figures, not in a pictorial sense, but they remind you of the verticality of sculpted bodies. These works do sit midway between 2 very big categories, sculpture on the one hand, cinema on the other. Sculpture because of the 3-dimensional aspect and the fact that they exist in 3-dimensional space along with the spectator. And cinema because the pieces are themselves slowly changing in time. So there is a kind of a development, a form of progression which occurs as you're looking. There are a number of paradoxes. They appear to be solid even though they're made of light. They appear to be motionless even in fact, as you can see that they're changing repeatedly through time. So yes, time is the fundamental medium perhaps.
Thanks, Anthony. And I'm sorry we can't be walking through that in this part of the talk. And really it is, while it's possible to view the video of the work and hear the discussion about it, what you're seeing on the screen only bears a tangential relationship to the actual experience of the work. So from beams, from that point, I'm going to move over to another artist, Beatrice Latique, and kind of ask the question, as artists working with light, what kind of knowledge do we need to have about the material qualities of light? So this project by French artist Beatrice Latique, who introduces some of the principles of optics that were needed to realise this idea at scale. Many of you may be familiar with her work, the VR, classic work, Notes on Blindness. So she was the art director for that project. This work, Nova, is about cosmology and they're sketches of an endless space inhabited by hundreds of stars. And we're looking at a mock-up of her idea which allowed her team to apprehend the technical stakes related to the materialisation of light beams through a perforated surface. And notice the gorgeous little paper model. It's paper's still really, really great to be able to, just fabricate ideas quickly. So, what do we need to know here? From physics, one formula that is useful for understanding how light travels through space is the law of reflection. And it comes into play in this project. So the angle at which a light strikes a surface, the angle of incidence is equal to the angle at which light bounces off the angle of reflection. So the ratio here between the size of the light source and the size of the projection once the beam has passed through a small hole is a consideration. So what happens is quite rapidly that beam widens and increases over the throw distance. So you don't get these nice fine beams anymore. So second, hardware constraints with lighting fixtures. So concentrated light sources generally have a limited opening angle, which means they must be mounted at a certain distance from the surface to be lit in order to cover a large enough area. And there's often spatial constraints with where you can mount your lights with the limitations of ceilings and galleries. This led Beatrice to this idea of, they looked at this idea of the optical principle of a simple mirror. The light source that is located at A seems to be behind the glass at the virtual location of A. So you can gain a lot of space there by having the light on the same side as the as the audience, if you like. And then this is a solution they came up with. By using a mirror, the distance from the light source could be virtually further and illuminate a larger surface. Here's a solution which they prototyped by using a mirror, and the distance from the light could be made virtually further and thus illuminate a larger surface. And the prototype's made out of a pyramid of mirrors using mini lasers, light sources, small mirrors, and McCall. And there is this is the full, the work at scale. And they've ended up using a convex mirror, which enabled the laser to just slightly refract and broaden the width of the laser beam, which is too sharp as it is. And I'm going for time. I've got a little video from that one, which is.
I think we've got another video playing as well already.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Got something going?
Give me a moment.
Our mic's gone.
It's going through the YouTube playlist.
Yeah.
Thank you. That seems very still, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We might continue and then possibly come back to that example.
Maybe try reload the page, or like because on the bottom right of the video player, there's like a broken image.
Yeah.
Icon.
Oh, that'll do it. Hello, Pika.
Yeah.
Maybe down as well.
Gone again?
I think Pika's gone. That's right. I can.
That's right.
That is a new message.
Yeah.
No one told me. Pika has
Do you need it to get to your slides?
No, I think.
But we'll try and get it back up too.
Now, the next example I wanted to look at, and this will kind of lead into our exercise, is by Pablo Valbuena, and Pablo now lives and works in the south of France. Originally was drawn to his work after it presented an augmented projection sculpture at Ars Electronica in 2007. And this work is called, he's got a series of these works called Time Tilings. And he explains the series of works brings to light the intersection of time-based structures and architectural systems. Architecture is a prolific field for patterns in a diverse range of scales. Street pavements, indoor tiles, modulated facades, standard measures, and city grids are good examples of this sense of order. A comparable kind of order is present in non-physical, time-based systems, language, music, film, and literature, guiding principles such as rhythm, repetition, or symmetry that organise these structures and are analogous with a higher dimension to the ones present in motionless patterns. So the time tellings assemble both kinds of orders in a time-based structured system. Although that sounds quite complex, we're very familiar with tessellation, and these are sort of all around us. And at this point, this is where the whole presentation could fall apart, or it could go really well. So I haven't done this with a group before. This exercise where we're going to remodel some of Pablo's time tilings, and we've got about 20 minutes. That'll take us to 1:30, which is when I was meant to finish, and then we'll have come back for about 10-15 minutes for the last part of the presentation. So we're gonna. I think we've got five laptops and projectors. So we're gonna do the math on. It's about eight in a group.
We've got only 2 laptops though, so...
Oh, actually, but I feel like there's some people with laptops here today.
Yeah. Did anyone download Mad Mapper? Sweet. Okay.
Oh,
so whoever
okay.
downloaded it and like opened the application and dragged it into your icon bar,
Yeah. But
you
cool.
just
Cool. So we're going to do that in a second, but I'll just show you. I'll show you a little video of the work that we're about to make. See, it says play video, and hey, we're back on. So originally, I know this looks a little bit dry and formal, but they all pay off. And originally I did think, oh, we're over at Pika, so there'll be lots of these architectural features that we can play with. Here it's much cleaner and not so much. A lot of the detail has been smoothed over. But I have brought in some little blocks, and so there's some props when we move into the next room. It's designed to be done in a cafe situation. They're lovely, hey? Yeah. Okay. So, jump out of that, and oh, sorry, you might have been wanting to see the this one. Definitely jumping out of it. Now I'm clicking everywhere. Okay. I'll just come up. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes covering this software interface with Mad Mapper. And then we can roll into the next room. Okay. And this is where we need to slightly adjust this video output. Well, I don't know if we can move this across. Okay. So a very quick run through MadMapper. There is surfaces, what they call surfaces. So we're going to make some surfaces. And so I'll just make a surface here. And it appears on this part of the interface. And what this display, we've got a display here which is the projector out. And when we're in the next room, that'll be projecting out into space. But we're going to be able to position these shapes so that they then land on the little props that we've set up in front of the projectors. And then there is some media which goes into these surfaces. So these surfaces will line up with the blocks. And there is some media. So there's some media which is on the right-hand side of the interface. Down the bottom, there's a couple of movies which, these are these time tiles. So I've just created these ones for you, but you could go through and continue to make your own. What they're doing is they've got they're loops, but they take an edge and we just rotate an edge around until it disappears. So it's taking an edge from the source shape and then rotating it or translating it until it folds back into the original shape. Cool. I reckon that's about all you need to know until you've got it in front of you. So let's slowly move into the other room and we'll pick up there. That was just about as chaotic as I was expecting. Thanks, everyone. So obviously we need a little bit more time to really explore that mapping territory, but hopefully that will get you interested. If you want to just pick that up and take it a little bit further, maybe we'll share those source files with you, the source clips. But what you can do, I'll just move away from the mic so I can see here, but you can just start to layer and connect these together in tiles. So there's some different layering modes. And you can do translations and flipping the axes and so on. So that's essentially what Pablo Valbuena has done in his work. This is and the source animations are really simple. So they're just taking a segment to the edge of the shape and animating them over time. Cool. So let's go back to the slide show. And how do I go back to the slides? We'll do this. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some considerations when taking these processes of mapping, of beaming light out on little models, and we then take them out and scale them up on the landscape. So in 2015, I was invited to serve as artistic associate to Nigel Jamieson on a series of Perth Festival openings under the overall artistic direction of Wendy Martin. And in 2017, in the second year of this tenure, we developed The Trees Speak, Bornawani. And there's Nigel Jamieson and our beloved Richard Wally standing up on the banks near Fraser's Avenue there. So the work was an immersive night walk. This is a little mud map, through Kings Park that stretched over 1.5 kilometres. And structurally, the work was organised into 5 acts and included 2 sections of procession along the main avenue and down the long vista, downhill towards the Women's Memorial. And then there were 2 sections of rest where the audience could sit in a grass clearing and watch the work unfold on a panoramic bank of trees or around a natural amphitheatre or a pool. The first section of the work was a highly immersive and startling transformation of Fraser's Avenue, the iconic 750 metre long cathedral-like avenue of trees that leads into Kings Park. There was a section on creation stories and a procession through rare and endangered species, which are actually in the park, and we called that part of the work Extinctions. And then the work climaxed with a section at the end called Seeds of Change, which was an epic installation in association with 3,000 young people across the state. And each of the lantern seeds in the installation represented a species that had been adopted as a totem. From the beginning, the work was designed to hold a great capacity of audience, and really audience capacity was the singular constraint that defined the route that was chosen through the park. A very large audience needed to comfortably process through the park without experiencing squeeze points. And in 2019, on a very beautiful night in February, we had an estimated audience of 60,000 snake their way through the park and experience the work together. That audience really was a majestic river of humanity flowing through the park. And there's a little clip of people entering. And to give you some comparison, the capacity of the Optus Stadium here is 60,000. So pretty cool for an art event to have that many people come out on a Monday night. So the storytelling unfurled on the trees. You can see these lines again, just coming out, but they're going much deeper into space. And on trunk and canopy and fragmented across the surface of millions of leaves and reverberated across the landscape with sound. When Byron Scullin spoke yesterday about leading into the chaos of multiplicities, and showed that great example of the 100 pearls in Wayfinder. Here the trees were doing a similar thing for us. The projection had a quality of what cinema theorist Sean Cubitt dubbed vanishing and becoming. As the audience processed through the park, the images broke apart or vanished and slowly coalesced into focus, before breaking up again and sometimes disappearing altogether. I have a theory that it's for this reason you won't find many works like this in the world, because it just doesn't fit in a commercial mode. The same kind of physics affected the sound. It was kind of moving in and out of focus. And then, of course, the weather came in and affected everything. And in 2017, that weather was apparently the biggest downpour in 100 years. And it was very nearly cancelled. This image here is actually shot on one of those wet nights in February. And the trees were, there were some big branches that came down, which was the main concern. So for the most part, we sort of dance with the natural phenomena at play with the sound and vision elements, but for me, the process of that vanishing and becoming reflected both the fragility and the resilience of the natural world. But at other moments, there were very, very real pressures to have focus and clarity, the kind of projection clarity that we've got on this screen here. But you know, there were times where everything disappeared, and so that caused some moments of very major distress. Very angry directors and such. To help us model this whole situation, we did use some LiDAR and previews in Unreal. Is this going to play? Don't know that it's helped out yet, but I can see it in the future. Actually, I think I can see it being helpful in the future. The kind of, where the image was falling into holes in trees, and the kind of problems we're having on site were being replicated on here. We did do a lot of just modelling in the studio. Here's a little bit with Zoe and Sharon, building some of these nests, a weaving project which became illuminated, and then Nigel setting up, using his garden vegetables to indicate scale, and that's one of the cardboard sets in the studio, and so on. Mr. Inflatable made an inflatable, so and I'll just show you a couple of minutes of those sections, of a couple of sections of the work. His sound is.
McCall, as absorbent as silence waiting. This rain like tears, this midnight, this falling, this full applause, this clear dignity.
going to jump there, but that fire, and show you another little section before we run out of time, but that fire sequence really scared the bejesus out of everyone, because there was a big fire that went through that year, went through Yarloop, and just the soundscape that Kingsley Reeve designed was full of terrifying sounds of fire. Had a huge array, huge array of speakers going along the avenue there. So the sound was the thing that was continuous, where the image came in and out along that section. And I'll just show you a couple of. This is going into some of that panoramic section, and a little bit of the extinctions, so you can hear some of that.
This country, I remember clearly being told stories about the sea level rising, the time when you could walk a long, long way to where Rottnest Island is now. And I remember talking about that and being ridiculed. Then gradually, as science came into it, the stories were verified. The sea level did rise, approximately 130 metres. They say that happened between 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. And we have these stories of this ancient time. And we commit them to memory. Generation after generation. Kura, a long, long time ago. We refer to it as Nyeting, the cold time. It's the time of creation, not of the planet, but of all the things that are on it. And at that time, when the law was laid down, we were to look after Budja, the land. We did so in a way that sustained not just us, but everything else as well. And in return, it would provide us with all the things that we need.
An interconnected web that made this place our place, one of the most unique and diverse places on the planet. The place of sand, the Banksia woodlands. Ngā Budja, our home. No place on earth has taken longer to develop. But in this tiny sliver of a moment we call today, we risk losing it.
The report concluded that we are now on the brink of a mass extinction, unseen for tens of millions of years, and that is largely of our own making.
Concerned now that we are in the middle of the biggest mass extinction event since the dinosaurs disappeared. 75% of plant and animal species that we know could go. Banksia aurantium. Banksia indica. The Cossack spider hawk. The king spider hawk.
When we look at our land, we see it with love, we see it with care. We see it through spiritual eyes that our old people see it and walk proud upon the land.
Now there's houses all over the place, there were swamps there was turtles, there was all wildlife, all that's gone, bulldozed in and that. You talk about wildlife, well then it's not there no more, you know. All the little animals are gone, so we shall destroy that there as well.
60 years ago, I looked at the farms where I used to work, and I clearly stated then, 60 years ago, that they're going to destroy this country, and they just flog the country all over, and that's why you see all the Selena.
Sorry, I think I'm running out of time here. I was going to mention some of the projection works that haven't really landed for me. There's many different kind of projection works that haven't maybe don't take in all of the considerations that we've been talking about today. The recent commission at the Perth Festival for the East Perth Power Station, I found really maybe they were a bit rushed, but it was a very underwhelming. But Lillian, how am I?
We're 10 to.
Yeah, we are. We do need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Quite quick. Oh, you've got 5 minutes? You have 5 minutes.
5
Actually,
minutes.
no, you're overtime. Sorry.
Because we got kids. Yeah.
You can, yeah, just, you can go for
The hard word. So, well, yeah, maybe I'll just, I will just have a little mention, a little rant on this. I was really looking forward to this, the results of this commission at the power station. But I found it was really unresolved, and the works didn't really, the selected artworks and the animation treatment didn't really connect with the site's rich history. And there's so many significant stories that could have been told, especially considering the area's importance as a Noongar camp. During the times the city maintained a prohibited area, and and earlier as a camp for settlers in the colony when they waited for their accommodation to be built. There's heaps of stories there, and the works that came in really were from elsewhere, and they didn't really address or have a conversation with the surface that they were projecting on. Like there was no connection with the power station building, and you've really got to address that when you're projecting on a surface. What you project on really changes the meaning, the relation of the work, if it's trees speaking, or whether you're projecting on old shells or water, or or a power station. And I just felt it was a really unfortunate outcome for both the artists and the festival. And we want to build future projects that build on local knowledge, digital processes, and storytellings that result in work that feels authentically connected to place and truly alive. Feels like it belongs. Thank you for inviting me today. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I think we've dealt with a few of the variables of spatial design with projection, there is a website, and can certainly provide some other links to the other artists that were referenced in this talk. So, thank you.